By now you've seen the hardware, and you've heard about the operating systems. So what now? What's next? What do we do with all this? Well, just like any other operating system, the mainframe supports a whole bunch of programming languages. And it's not just COBOL, Fortran, and Assembler, although it certainly does run those, and it happens to run them very, very well. But the mainframe also runs C, C++, Java, Swift, Python, Node, and others. So if you know one of those languages already, you don't need to relearn it to start coding on the mainframe. And you can certainly write standalone programs that sit on top of the operating system, but to really take advantage of the platform, you probably want to use some of the middleware. Now, middleware is software that sits between the operating system and the end user or end user applications. It supplies functionality that is not provided by the operating system and that you shouldn't have to write from scratch every time you start a new program. Under this category, you'll find things like databases. Now, a database is simply a facility that records and catalogs data. So you can tell a database, store this piece of data at this location. Then later on, you tell it, give me that piece of data back, or change that data we stored earlier from an 8 to a 12. Web servers and application servers are also middleware. They make it so you can interact with code through a web browser or by using APIs. The mainframe also makes extensive use of transaction managers. You've probably heard me say by now a couple of times that the mainframe can handle large-scale business transactions. These transactions typically need to happen in a reliable and consistent way, and each stage needs to be carefully orchestrated so that one part of the transaction doesn't accidentally overwrite another part. They also need to be set up so that if an error happens at stage 57 out of 60 of the execution, the whole thing can be rolled back to a previously known state. This kind of logic is not fun to code at all, not even a little bit. But with the help of a transaction engine, it becomes something that not only can happen, but it can happen at scale and with extremely high performance and reliability. The transaction managers you'll find most often on the mainframe are CICS, or CICS, IMS, and TPF. Another important piece of middleware is the humble message queue, sometimes shortened just to MQ. So say you've got two programs. Application A is user-facing, and Application B does the back-end data processing work. They work together. So simple solution, right? You just draw two lines between them. And when Application A has work for Application B, it passes it over here. And when Application B is done with the work and wants to pass it back to Application A, it sends it back over here, right? What's so hard about this? Well, what happens when we scale this? What happens when there's so much work happening on the back end that we have to add another instance of Application B? We have to add another two lines, so that adds some complexity. Also, this Application A in the front now has to decide which back end to send it to and keep track of what work is outstanding. Now scale this up to 4 front-end applications and 8 back-end applications, and oh my, we've made a mess. A message queue works kind of like it sounds. It's what's called a pub-sub model. One entity publishes onto a queue, and another entity subscribes to that queue. The message queue middleware means that the applications don't have to talk directly to one another. They can interact through this queue. You can think about this almost like in a diner. When the waiter or waitress takes your order, they write it down on that piece of paper, and they stick it on that spinny wheel thing halfway between the counter and the kitchen. When someone in the kitchen can work on something new, they grab the next order and they start working on it. And when they're done, they take the completed work, they put it on that counter, which is basically another type of queue. They ding the bell, and you've got your pancakes and hash browns. Just replace the order slip with what's my checking account balance and the pancakes and hash browns with hopefully a nice big number, and you can see how a mainframe business app that scales can be built using MQ. They also work great for things like microservices, mobile to back-end applications, and adding application logic to embedded devices. Today's mainframe developers use a mixture of compiled and scripting programming languages and a variety of middleware components to ensure that their applications run smoothly and without surprises.